Okay, wir fangen an in ein bisschen Minute. Das ist ohne Foto. Wir haben die 5 Klimaaktivisten, präsentieren einen Vortrag Lützerath Lebt, Einblicke in die Widerstand für globale Klimagerechtigkeit Kämpfen. You can't evict the movement. Der Energiekonzern RWE wird noch Jahre brauchen, die Kohle
coal extraction, lignite extraction in the area of Lützerath is going to continue. This village is going to disappear, and the struggle for climate justice goes on. Lützerath is a village that is going to be taken off.
Hallo.
Hello.
Ja, cool, dass ihr hier seid.
Cool that you're here.
Wir sind eine Gruppe von
We are
Menschen,
a group of people
eine Zeit
who
Lützerath verbracht
have spent time in Lützerath,
sind natürlich auch nicht
and
alle, bei weitem
of
nicht
course
alle.
this is not the whole group.
Wir repräsentieren nur einen ganz
We
kleinen
only
Teil
represent
der
a small
Bewegung.
part of the movement,
Ja, aus der Perspektive
and
möchten wir
from
euch
that
gerne
perspective
was
we would
über,
like to
Klimagerechtigkeit
tell you a
und
bit
den
about climate
Klimagerechtigkeitsstruggle
justice and the struggle for it
erzählen.
in Lützerath.
Und wir hier
And
auf der Bühne,
we on the stage here,
sind Nunja,
we are Nunja,
Timber,
Timber,
deren und Luca, keine Pronomen,
and
Pronomen
Luca, Castoia,
Franca,
and I am Franca.
Genau. Und dann
Right.
gebe ich mal weiter.
And I'll hand over.
Okay, ich fange jetzt an.
Okay, I will start. And the interpreter is going to repeat the names. It is Luca, Franca, Timber, Nunja, and Castroia.
Capitalism prioritizes economic growth and profit over environmental and social concerns. On the screen, you'll see a chart about the Anthropocene, the role of humanity in our planet, which is nothing but more plastic, more temperature, more climate change, more climate disasters, lack of human rights. Back to capitalism. Capitalism leads to overconsumption, use of fossil fuels, waste of essential resources, destruction of natural habitats, exploration of flora and fauna. Despite any UN-led resolutions, whether it's the UNFCCC, the IPCC, or the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris talks, Santiago Network, you name it, nothing that the UN does has led to any kind of concern by the state and the corporation authorities. Nothing has held them accountable. On the screen, you will see how much megatons of carbon emissions Germany produces based on the renewable and non-renewable resources. Next slide. Yeah. On the scene, to give you a bit background about Lützerath, underneath Lützerath, there was the worst type of coal that you can burn, worst type of fossil fuel that can be burned, and Germany prefers to burn that over, let's say, it's transitioning to more renewable sources of energy. Next slide. This is the amount of coal that was burned just in Germany. Sorry, the slide is in German. Just in Germany, brown coal, which is lignite, 131 million tons. Next slide. This is probably everybody's newsfeed right now. This is what's happening all over the world, whether it's thousands trapped at Burning Man. I'm sure everybody laughed about that, whether it's the billionaires who got submerged in a submarine, whether it's ECOP, whether it's the particular particle matters, whether it's the genocide happening with the Chiapas or the others that the others will mention later on in the slides. Next slide. These are some of the successful international movements against coal mining. Right off the top, you'll see Turkey, where the NG's investment, ironically, NG's was had the highest investment in COP21. COP being the conference of parties that the UN does every year. It's nothing but a sham. I'm sure everybody has heard about that. Followed by Team 29, which is a human rights NGO based in Russia, Greece, Client Earth. They had beautiful successes everywhere besides of Germany, which likes to say that they are the best in human rights. France, they're supposed to be the highest in human rights. But that doesn't get to be seen when it comes to actual rights, justice systems. yeah, there are other examples, and on the bottom you will find sources, which are, of course, if you are a computer, if you're a computer geek, if you can do data analysis, they're always looking for people who can get into this. Next slide. These are just some examples of forest occupations in Germany. I won't read them all out to you, but out of all the forest occupations in the last 2 years, actually this is 3 years, 3.5 years, there's only been a few successful litigation cases. The one being the Huttendorf in Gorleben, which won a court case in 2018, and then the Hambacher forest, which after getting evicted had to take the government, the state authorities to court and be like, no, what you did was illegal. Next slide. Just to finish up, what I had to say, phasing out fossil fuels is not only a technical issue and a climate necessity, it also requires a cultural rethink. Whether it's Dortmund fans singing the Steiger-Lied coal miners song, or whether it's holding the Germans with the card fetish accountable.
Okay. So I plan to continue in English, actually, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I will just continue in English. But I can also still okay. So I will talk about the like how Lützerath started a bit, and how it came to be what it was and what it is still at another places. In the summer of 2020, the RWE wanted to expand the coal mine Garzweiler and started to destroy a road between Lützerath and Keinberg. And after this, there was a lot of demonstration around this destruction of the road. And on the left side, you see like the Mahnwache, the vigil, Lützerath, just a few days after it started, because there were demonstrations after the street was demolished, and then people just sat there and said, okay, we will just sit here and demonstrate against this, and they never stopped, or never stopped by themselves. They were stopped at some point. The other picture, it's just later, 2020, and next slide. And also in Germany, there's a cutting season, always from October to February. So in this cutting season, trees can be cut down and forests can be cut down. And on the first picture, you can see trees cut down in Lützerath. And we anticipated the cuttings. They started in November, and in the beginning we were not enough people. And after some time we locked down Lützerath with like the hammocks and traverses over these barricades at every entrance to the village. But then in the new year, year of 2021, in the middle you can see some houses inside of a fence, and you can see them being demolished at the bottom. So we tried to stop these demolitions by sitting on the roofs of the houses, and also like stopping these tanker trucks that provided the fuel for the diggers. And also, if you look really carefully, you can see a person on the blue digger there. One person managed to climb over the fences and get on top. And there's one slide missing from Paula's Hof, actually. So, there it is. So after these destructions in January of 2021, there were a lot of like music festivals, cultural stuff, mobilization to get more people to Lützerath. And when in October the cutting season started again, the ZAT Rheinland, the zone to defend, was proclaimed. And in November there were another festival and some Ende Gelände actions. And we started to occupy more houses in Lützerath. So the House of the Unknown and the 4C were occupied, 2 other houses, not the Paula. But in January, on the 8th of January 2022, the Paula was occupied. And a few days later, the whole of Lützerath, all of Lützerath was RWE and security free or secu free, so it was all ours. We freed every house that was still there. And this is a map of the Tagebau Garzweiler, of the open pit mine. And you can see, actually, it was planned a lot bigger, like also these villages to the left were planned to be demolished, but later this full line was a small reduction, and then this pointed line is how it is now. So Lützerath and Immerath are gone, but Holzweiler and Keinberg, Kuckum and the other Westrich, Berverath are.
So, jetzt können wir noch ein bisschen eingehen auf Strukturen, die wir in Lützerath hatten und wie wir dort organisiert waren. Es gab zum Beispiel schon sehr früh
Now about the structures in Lützerath. Earlier there was lots of power infrastructure
und die Häuser hatten Strom.
that was benefited because we had houses and they had power.
Nochmal so modifiziert, dass er nicht abgeschaltet werden konnte.
Rather, the power was changed so it couldn't be turned off in the houses.
Genau, deswegen hatten wir sehr lange Zeit einfach
Exactly. So we had a lot of power for a lot of time, but also we had solar infrastructure, especially which could be used when RWE cut off our power, which was in December of 2022, when they just took the power cord to Lützerath out of the ground. So there was a kind of replacement structure of solar power modules and batteries, which were charged on the outside and brought back in. Go back. With that, for example, mobile phones were charged, and Wi-Fi and communication media. On the left side, you can see one of our old trees where the first treehouse was constructed, one of our first tree houses. And at the very top, there was a Wi-Fi router. That Wi-Fi router had to be destroyed in the end, and the SIM card was burned, and the router itself was dumped into waste. What's also funny is that we could use the street lights. Actually, theoretically, they shouldn't be turned on then, but people with electrical abilities were able to put in switches to turn them on and off, because we wanted to turn them off when people were sleeping.
Also, we were able to use water. There was a water supply, the houses were supplied, and there was hot water in places at one part of this Paula farm. So that was a kind of comfortable occupation, I should say. And sometimes we could actually reactivate water lines, water pipes that had been cut. In some places, they had dug into the ground to disconnect the pipes, and people from Lützerath then just went back down there and reconnected them. It didn't work. In one instance, and one person actually had to dive into the mud pool that was created. A few structures that were built at the time and that could be used. Lützerath, in general, was a lot of shared use. You see the village of huts that we put up, a row of tree houses next to a road, and you see the parlor farm at the bottom center, and to the right you see a self-built circus tent, and there was an actual one as well. So there were lots of shared spaces and much more, and there's a monument at the top left. We built a large tower as well, which maybe had 4 floors on it, 4 stories, and you could spend time there. Sadly, the tower was only finished about 3 times before the site was cleared, and it was back on the ground quite quickly, but it was in use for quite a while, and plenaries were held in there under this tarpaulin that you see. Now, sleeping arrangements, sleeping opportunities were shared, so you had this info space and see where there was a space, so guests or people that had just arrived could find a place to sleep this way. They would take a cart, they would, and then go to that place. But of course, there were also rooms where people were living on a more permanent basis. Right. Hi.
Hallo zusammen, ich bin sehr nervös, immer wieder.
I'm a bit nervous.
So, also, auf der linken Seite
Right.
sehen wir ein Bild, wo unsere Programme
On the left,
Vorträge oder Workshops
you have an image, a program of talks and workshops. On the other side,
Toiletten, Schickbarricades und Kochen und Essen.
you have things like toilets, meal times,
Halt Aufgaben
things that we had to get organized together.
Seite eintragen.
And you could actually enter your names for shifts. We had certain monuments
In den 60er Jahren von Shell
to
auf jeden Fall ermordet und erhängt.
people that were murdered by Shell in the 1960s.
Und für die Zapatisten
Ujalo Torojaba,
Gruppen sowohl in Deutschland wie halt aber auch im globalen
and
Süden halt kämpfen.
various groups all over the world
Check. Küfer. Das hat
that were
man
remembered.
schon, dass die Küfer jeder Mensch bekannt ist. Das, was wir zum Vorteil in Lützerath hatten, wir konnten den ganzen Tag arbeiten. Es gab Menschen, die sich extra dafür gekümmert haben, morgens mit
Kitchen.
Essen für das ganze Dorf halt zu machen.
So there was a kitchen for everyone, and
Das war nice auf jeden Fall. Beste Besetzung für mich persönlich.
this was the best occupation, really.
So, Arbeitsamt.
So we had our unemployment office.
Gemacht werden wollten oder Menschen wollten es nicht machen. Menschen konnten
There were
es,
tasks that people
nicht, also haben wir so eine Art,
didn't want to do or couldn't do because of lack of skills.
Sachen mit Hilfe
So we had this
werden müssen,
pinboard
die keine Kapazität
where
hatten,
tasks were redistributed.
übernommen, die Kapazität haben oder die Fähigkeit halt haben.
People with capacity would come and pick a task.
Auf der rechten Seite sehen wir
On the right,
das Auenland, also verschiedene
you see
Barrios. Das Dorf wurde in Barrios aufgeteilt. Das bedeutet
the way that the space was divided.
Stadtteil, okay, danke schön.
So you had these various quarters, or what, I don't know, barrios perhaps,
Ich bin wirklich nicht so gut darin.
neighborhoods, whatever.
Nervös. Und wir haben das
I'm so nervous.
fertig gekriegt, weil wir keine Kapazität hatten, das vorzubereiten.
Wir haben keine Kapazitäten gehabt, das vorzubereiten. Wir haben es heute erst fertiggestellt, diese Folie.
Okay, ich gebe einfach mal weiter. Oder wollt ihr noch was dazu sagen? Ja, bitte.
Ja, genau, die Repro-Schichten wurden ja auch gerade schon angesprochen, also Reproduktionsarbeit.
So the care work We already talked about things that always need to be done so that we can exist in this area. For example, the toilets. There were toilets where we separated the fluids from the other things using 2 containers. So that way it wouldn't smell that badly. And we also had the problem that we had canisters and they were full quite quickly and sometimes they even spilled over. So then we actually built a pissing hole which was connected directly to the canals, so nobody had to empty anything. On the left side you see the bike repair shop. We had communal bikes that you could use to go to the train station. And sometimes they were damaged while they were parked at the train station, so we had to take them back and repair them here.
Widerständig zu machen und aber auch Sachen für sich zu erfinden oder zu bauen.
And we also had a workshop where you could just be an inventor and create things. And when we asked for tool donations, we were literally overrun with offers for donations. We also had 3 halls, one of which we turned into a nightclub, one of them into a skate rink. And yeah, so this was definitely a nice way to spend evenings or free time. This is the second hall, the wooden one, and there we had a communal eating space, and on the left side an art collective had exhibitions, and we celebrated in that space a lot in the evenings. And we also created a playground for us where we had lots of fun. I mean, it might not look like it, but we had a lot of fun. Like climbing the roofs, building connections between the trees.
Okay, ich erzähle ein bisschen was über die Verteidigungsstrukturen und wie wir für Sicherheit.
Tell you some things about the defense structure and how we handled security. On the left side, you see the action point, where we coordinated actions and night shifts and everything that was relevant for our defense. And the entire time we were in Lützerath, we had night shifts, and we had a so-called knitting shift that was coordinating everyone, and then we had 2 other shifts, the bus stop shift where people also spent the night, and then 1 shift in the communal space in the town center. That way we could make sure that, for example, drunk people from nearby villages came over, we could stop them, or fascists also sometimes came and we could scare them away. And we also had an alarm system. So there was the small alarm using walkie-talkies, and there was also the large alarm, which would actually trigger sirens across the entire village. And it would wake up everyone. And this actually was used when the cops came into Lützerath. And we wanted to make it as difficult and as expensive as possible to get rid of us and ideally even stop it. And we had various structures for this. For example, these traversing lines between the trees which we set up, but also between houses and trees. And these are really cool because as long as one person is in one of these connections, the trees cannot be cut down. So essentially we're using our life as a protection for the forest. And if you're above a certain height, normal cops can't go to us because of legal reasons, so they needed specially trained cops, which are not as common and had to specifically be requested. And since we were also able to move from structure to structure with these connections, we could make it even more difficult. But there weren't only houses that we could connect, but we also built our own structures, which we added to this network, so-called monopods or tripods, which are 1 or 2 or 3 pieces of wood that we connect together, and a person will be on top. And the people are actually held in place by a rope, which are used for connecting the structure, so they couldn't cut these ropes, otherwise humans would fall down. And monopods, for example, were especially difficult for the police to get us out of, because they would need special hardware equipment to get up there and take us out of the structure. Similarly, tripods work. It's just that it's 3 logs connected to each other. And on the right there is a so-called hyperpod. So it's a tripod and 2 monopods connected together, which was particularly high. And in the end, it was only successfully cleared by the police because they convinced the person on top that it wouldn't be safe for them anymore due to winds. And now we come to the next part of our structures. Another very effective structure was a tunnel here with a deck telephone. The tunnel was digged secretly below the little forest, so-called, and during the clearing, a video was published of the people in these caves. So it was said that the tunnel is very unstable because and that would cause people to be injured in case of a clearing. So the clearing was stopped, and well, actually it moved the clearing by 7 days because of security concerns. And also there, the cops didn't have any idea of how to clear it, so in the end they had some special experts organized, which were trained to convince activists to get out of the tunnel. And of course people didn't have lots of joy sitting in the tunnel after a week, but still the cops didn't have any idea of how to clear us.
In Lützerath,
activists have also tried to be in solidarity with climate justice fights on the whole world, because the climate crisis is a consequence of capitalism, colonialism, and century-long exploitation. And we tried to stand with lots of different powers together, for example, with the Zapatistas, with the UCPA in Colombia, but also with lots of other international activists, especially out of the global south, which also visited Lützerath, like Juan Pablo Bucharest, who visited in 2021 for the first time and multiple consecutive times from the UCPA, and who always supported Lützerath in solidarity. And we can say that especially now because Yucba in Colombia, in the border region of Venezuela and Colombia, which are also endangered by stone coal, by a next to Asian site which is 16 times as large as in Garzweiler. And a lot of people die there. And it's one of the most dangerous places for activists in the world. Juan Pablo, for example, also had two tried murder attacks, which he survived. That was the culture which we tried to live in Lützerath. Now Juan Pablo lives in Paris in exile. We didn't want to let you leave without ways of acting. Lützerath still lives and continued in the multitude of fights. For example, we ride together. Maybe you can join. And also, as a climate movement, we wanted to connect more with the refugee movement. And there are people of Lützerath also there. And when we continue like that, we might have the Alternative for Germany in power, and the left might be left. Might not be left to counteract that, and we wanted to give you these ways of action. And now you can ask us questions if you're interested.
In was für einem System leben wir, in dem die Polizei Menschen verprügelt und ihr Leben gefährdet, die sich für die eigenen Klimaziele der Regierung einsetzen, in dem die Medien über Gewalt von AktivistInnen diskutieren, aber darüber schweigen, dass Deutschland als viertgrößter historischer Emittent schon jetzt Millionen von Existenzen im globalen Süden zerstört hat. Und in dem es trotzdem legal ist, noch 280 Millionen Tonnen Kohle zu verbrennen, aber illegal eine solidarische Gemeinschaft aufzubauen, um das zu verhindern. War jetzt alles umsonst? Schauen wir jetzt tatenlos zu, wie der Kapitalismus die Klimakrise und die globale Ungleichheit weiter befeuert?
Nein, wir nicht. Wir haben dafür gesorgt, dass die Welt die hässliche Logik des Kapitalismus in Aktion gesehen hat. Dass vielen Menschen jetzt klar geworden ist, dass die Politik in diesem System Profitinteressen immer über das Wohl der Menschen stellen wird. Die Politik hat die Räumung auch deswegen so eilig und so brutal durchgesetzt, weil sie Angst davor hatte, wie stark Lützerath als Kristallisationspunkt der Bewegung geworden ist. Zehntausende Menschen aus verschiedensten Teilen der Gesellschaft haben sich hinter diesen Kampf gestellt. Und die Welt konnte für einen Moment die Wirksamkeit davon spüren. Wir haben alle unterschiedliche Vorstellungen davon, wie genau eine klimagerechte Gesellschaft aussieht und wie wir dorthin kommen. Aber wir sind uns einig, dass ein gutes Leben für alle möglich ist, ohne Profitlogik und nicht auf Kosten anderer. Wir wissen das, weil wir in nur 2,5 Jahren einen Ort aufgebaut haben, wo das gelebt wurde. Und wir haben die Zeit genutzt, uns mit sozialen und ökologischen Kämpfen auf der ganzen Welt zu vernetzen und Wissen auszutauschen. All das wurde nicht geräumt. All diese Erfahrungen tragen wir weiter. Denn der Kampf um den Ort ist vielleicht vorbei, aber noch ist die Kohle im Boden. Und Lützi ist nur ein Teil eines jahrhundertealten globalen Kampfes gegen Ausbeutung und Kolonialismus. Und der ist noch lange nicht vorbei. Wir werden uns in nächster Zeit mit anderen Akteuren über Strategien und neue Ansatzpunkte austauschen. Wir werden Organizing Calls für Interessierte veranstalten und uns weiter mit anderen Struggles verbinden. Und wenn wir noch mehr werden, können wir beim nächsten Mal viel mehr erreichen und langfristig das System aus den Angeln heben. Sei es der Kampf gegen den Erdgasausbau, gegen Kohleimporte oder die tödlichen Grenzen Europas. Du wirst deinen Platz in diesem Kampf finden.
We hope that the non-German speakers were able to get the content from the subtitles, and maybe that the chance to hear the original audio was another way of experiencing this video. On to the Q&A. Well, just briefly, this video, there's a lot of police violence that is in the video. This can be, of course, not easy to bear. You can talk to people about this. We encourage you to do that. Don't just bear this yourselves if this is a burden on you.
At
9:15, we'll have an extended Q&A for people that have more questions, but I think we have a few minutes left here now. Right. So, people in the hall, you can queue up behind the microphones, and we have signal angels. And there is a question from the internet via the signal angel, and that's what we will start with. So, from the internet, we have the comment that it was so nice to be in Lützerath, and that is linked to the question how you provided for the activists on the traverses Well, all the people that were in the action had some water and some basic food and sleeping bags, and we had a lot of food actually available. So the people that were up there were able to be supplied, and there were some people on the ground who were parliamentary observers, for example, and they were able to bring food to these people. We have a question from the hall. Hi. Thank you for giving this talk. My question is, how bad was the weather, the wind, the rain for the tree houses and the structures? Was it a lot of repairs that you had to do? Did you have to evacuate any buildings?
Sorry, ich darf das Mikro nicht anfassen.
Well, in the first autumn and winter in 2020, there was a strong storm, and we had only held vigil before that, and we didn't feel safe. We thought trees might fall down on people, and so we asked that there was this empty house, which then later turned into the villa with the workshop and everything. And Eckhard said, okay, you can spend this one night, this stormy night, in the villa, but please look after my cupboards, my cabinets. And then we said, well, we have such a lot to repair, couldn't we stay on for a second night? And of course, it was almost winter by then, and we were then allowed to spend the whole winter there as well. And I would like to add that we were looking at the weather reports, forecasts, and as soon as winds were above a certain strength, we would actually move to the occupied houses. People were making space for more people to be in the houses, so that people didn't have to sleep in the tree houses in those nights. And we, of course, chose more sturdy, stable trees for that. And there was poplar trees that we chose not to equip with tree houses. We had a question from the microphone 2. I would like to ask how you managed, especially at the beginning, when activism was fairly new, how you organized yourselves. Is there a documentation about the findings that you made, so that in 2020-21, well, thank you for your activism and for the talk. Well, in the beginning, it was a lot of networking that we did with locals that were still there, and those in the surrounding villages. And on site, then we had daily plenaries, where responsibilities were shared and assigned, and then one person was responsible for 1 week, say, for the clearing the waste or emptying litter bins or cleaning toilets and stuff. Just, it doesn't mean that they had to do all that themselves, but they had to make sure that it was done. And we could say that Lützerath, of course, wasn't the first large occupation that was done. Many people were involved that had already been at Hambacher Forst and other places, and that had been networking with the places around and the people that were still living there. It wasn't a complete novelty, completely uncharted territory, but to build a community that likes to stay for a long time, that is quite a different issue. And I think that would go beyond what we can say. And of course, I guess we would give very different answers to that as well. We have a question from the internet.
Es wird ein Q&A im Bauvorkehrungen geben. The internet asks if there should have been more tunnels.
Okay, und dann
No comment.
ein bisschen Zeit für die Frage auf Mikrofon 3.
We have some more time for the question from microphone 3. Thank you very, very much for everything you did. I find it so, it's so important.
Also ich selber habe das Thema mit, hat man Hoffnung oder hat man nicht?
For me, a big question was, do I have hope or do I not? Always somewhere in between, hoping that the people will come around, or sometimes I'm afraid they won't. And I'm wondering, where are you getting your strength from? From the hope that change will come from the people, or from the fatalism? Well, it's probably different for everyone. I can only speak for myself. We from Lützerath lives, we regularly meet and we bring together our struggles that we aren't fighting together anymore. And knowing that in the global south the humans are struggling much more, fighting even harder, and they're hit by classism, and somehow we all think that we're on the left, but we still don't come together. And something that we learned in Lützerath was actually bringing our struggles together. And that's also what I wish for us, that everyone who would say they feel like they're on the left, to come together and fight for one struggle.
Ich finde die Frage total spannend.
I find this question so interesting, and I wish there was an easy answer.
Auf der einen Seite würde ich sagen, aus meiner Perspektive haben wir nicht, also dürfen wir nicht aufhören, also wir dürfen uns sozusagen nicht
stop. We can't allow ourselves to stop.
Loslösen, irgendwie gegen Ungerechtigkeit zu
and
kämpfen,
we
von der wir
can't detach ourselves from the injustice that we create through the privileges we have in this country. And what I learned in Lützerath was that community can give you so much strength, and humans, people you can really trust, where you feel the togetherness. That really gives me a lot of strength.
Zehrt es auch an einem, weil es alles es Kraft auch kostet,
it still
weil man auch
is a struggle, and it costs energy to keep these communities alive.
Ja, am Ende denke ich, dass es was total Schönes auch ist und was
But in the end, I think it's really beautiful and it's really worth it.